In the rural town of Smithville, Texas, there lived a husband and wife named John and Mary, who made a living breeding dogs and selling them for meat. Raising dogs for meat was unheard of in this part of the country, where chickens, ducks, and pigs were the typical livestock. But John and Mary were different. They would buy puppies just weaned from their mothers, raise whole litters until grown, and then callously sell the dogs to be slaughtered for profit, with no regard for the loyalty and spirit of such intelligent creatures. One day on a trip to the mountains, Mary purchased a strange-looking dog for cheap at a roadside stand. This dog had jet black fur, but a single white spot right on his forehead. Unlike the other dogs, this one named Rover was aloof and avoided playing with the pack. He would simply lie curled in a corner, silently observing with his eyes. Rover only approached his food when the others had finished, never scrambling or fighting over a meal like they did. During feeding time, John and Mary would often viciously beat the starving dogs with sticks as they violently competed for food, much to the dismay of their neighbors who overheard the pained yelps. The dogs were given no names, only referred to collectively as "Hey." One morning, Rover attempted to escape by digging under a crumbled brick in the back corner of the pen. He feverishly clawed at the earth with his paws, yearning for freedom. But unfortunately, John returned unexpectedly to grab more stock to fulfill a large order. Catching Rover in the act, John angrily grabbed a stick and began beating the dog mercilessly, kicking him in the stomach with his boot when Rover tried to bite back in self-defense. The painful blows came down heavy on Rover's front legs as John yelled, "Try that again, I'll kill you, I'll kill you." Finally collapsing in exhaustion, the dog let out a final whimper before his eyes froze open, dead. Showing no remorse, John immediately called to have Rover's lifeless body hauled off and sold. That night, John had a vivid nightmare of being attacked by a vengeful dog. Thrashing violently in his sleep, he accidentally struck Mary lying next to him. "Ow!" she cried out, jolted awake in the middle of the night by the painful blows. Though both equally wicked, John did genuinely love his wife and felt awful about bruising her face and stomach. Ashamed of the marks, Mary refused to go to the market the next day, not wanting the other vendors to gossip. While napping that afternoon, Mary was startled awake by the sounds of the dogs loudly howling. Despite her own injuries, she limped outside in a rage and fiercely whipped the dogs for interrupting her rest. Though childless after years of marriage, it seemed the heavens saw fit to punish this cruel couple. That evening over dinner, Mary told John, "This morning I nearly lost my mind with that black dog. It just stood there howling continuously no matter how much I whipped it with a stick. I had to scream and curse at it for a while before it finally stopped." John was surprised and asked, "Which black dog? We only had the one." "Are you crazy? What nonsense are you talking about?" Mary snapped back. John's face turned pale as he stammered, "That dog. I beat it to death yesterday and sold the body. I can't believe I forgot to tell you." In disbelief, Mary responded, "Have you lost your mind? Let me go check the pen." She rushed outside and opened the dog pen, only to find the black dog was indeed gone. Perplexed, Mary said, "But I clearly saw it just this morning. My eyes must be playing tricks on me." She looked to John and asked again, "Are you certain you didn't mistake today for another day?" John insisted, "You were home all day today. I think that dog's ghost must be haunting us both now, dear." That night, as John was sleeping soundly, he heard a dog howling. In his dream, he walked towards the woeful cries until he saw the black dog standing behind the kitchen. Though only its body and tail were visible, John could recognize it was the same dog. He slowly stepped closer as the howls grew louder, piercing his ears. "Rover, please stop haunting me and my wife. I'm sorry," John pleaded. Suddenly the dog turned to face him, but instead of a canine head, it was the head of Mary. John screamed in terror, jolting awake, drenched in sweat. Not finding his wife beside him, John frantically searched the house to no avail. Bracing himself, he checked the dog pen and was met with a horrific sight. His wife, on all fours, hungrily eating leftover food from the dog bowl, pausing to gag and cough. Seeing his wife in such a state, John was paralyzed except for the tears streaming down his cheeks. Abruptly, Mary looked up at John and began viciously barking. She let out a few mournful howls before slowly crawling towards him. Overcome with fear, John turned and fled the house, screaming into the night. His shouts woke the neighbors, whose dogs also began barking loudly. John collapsed on the side of the road until he was found unconscious by his neighbors. They rushed him to the hospital, unaware of what had transpired. Assuming a burglary, the villagers searched the house and found Mary passed out in the dog pen. She too was taken to receive urgent medical care. After some time, the once wicked couple were reduced to two vacant souls, flickering between lucid and deranged states, weeping one minute and cackling the next. David and I didn't think much of it. He showered first since he just got off work while I lay in bed on my phone waiting. Suddenly I caught a faint rotten smell in the room, like something dead. It was just a passing whiff, but I sat up and looked under the bed thinking maybe there was a dead mouse. Instead I saw a pile of used condoms scattered underneath. I knocked on the bathroom door and complained to my husband. "Dear, this hotel is so dirty. They didn't even clean up. There are used condoms all over under the bed." I didn't hear a reply from David but could still hear him whistling and scrubbing away. Then he even started playing Trinkongsson music in the shower, which was odd because he never listened to that artist before. But I patiently waited. Oh well, it was nice he was changing things up. In 2017, after getting married, my husband moved in with my family since his house was in the countryside while mine was in the city. That year, we wanted to move out on our own, but due to financial constraints and wanting to save money to have a baby, we decided not to. My family's house was really small, with 3 generations living together. So since we were newlyweds, my family kindly let us stay in the attic loft to have some privacy. However, we were too shy to be intimate due to the noise traveling, so we never conceived. Later, we chose to time it with my ovulation and booked a hotel room to try. We usually went to a familiar hotel near our home, but that day it was under renovation, so we switched to another nearby hotel. When we got to the hotel, the receptionist said there were no vacancies. As my husband David turned around to get the bike, a plump, middle-aged woman called out, "There's still a room, dear." She hurried over to us, handed me a room key, and told us to leave the bike for the staff to park. She even scolded the young receptionist, "If you keep working so cluelessly, I'll go bankrupt." I must have dozed off because I suddenly dreamed there was a bloated purple foot covered in wriggling flies hanging outside the window. The stench was awful and so vivid that I gasped and jerked awake to see my husband standing over me, staring intensely. I looked at the clock and whined, "You showered for nearly half an hour. Usually you're so quick." David didn't say anything, just smiled and handed me a towel, signaling it was my turn. I hurried, anxious we might get charged extra past the hour. But when I came out of the bathroom, I froze in shock. My husband was naked and twisted into a bizarre pose, his head tilted with arms and legs sprawled, clinging onto the window bars. I burst out laughing. Trying new positions or just going crazy today? David didn't speak, just grinned slightly and lunged at me like a starved tiger. His lovemaking was completely different, uncaring of my feelings as he grunted away with a creepy laugh. I was scared and slapped his face several times, yelling, "Are you crazy? Why are you acting so strange?" David whispered, "What's your name? Where do you live?" Now I was disturbed, but still played along to not ruin the mood. "I'm Sarah from Pine Street." As soon as I finished speaking, David threw his head back, cackling loudly, and asked, "Marry me, okay? Say yes?" Confused, I said, "You're mad today, aren't you?" Hearing my response, David choked me, shouting, "Marry me!" I kicked him away, gasping for air. He lunged again, embracing me tightly, and said, "I'm Jack. This honeymoon suite is for you and me, Sarah." Terrified, I frantically slapped and called out my husband's name. Josh, it's me, your wife." I grabbed a water bottle and splashed it in his face. David collapsed limply to the bed. In a panic, I gathered our clothes and rushed out the door, screaming. We were both still undressed. Hearing my shouts, 2 staff ran up, and seeing me nude at the door, they bashfully kept their distance. I hurriedly covered myself with a shirt and urged them to take my husband out of the room. By now he was regaining consciousness. We scrambled down the stairs, getting dressed, while I explained what happened. I asked the receptionist if she knew anything. She had only worked there 3 months, but heard from the snack lady that months ago, a man had hanged himself right on the window frame and wasn't discovered for over 2 days. Then somehow she concluded her shift was over and hurriedly drove off on her scooter.